Hi, I'm Donald Osborne, and welcome to this section of the Audrain collection here in Newport, Rhode Island. Today we're going to talk about some of the Porsches in the Audrain collections and why they're here and what they mean to the mission of the Audrain collections to preserve, celebrate, and share automotive history. While there are over 375 cars in the collection, there are 50 Porsches. So obviously Porsches mean a lot to the collection, but we'd like to discover exactly why these particular Porsches are here and what they represent in terms of the collection and its mission. There are a lot of modern Porsches here, mostly water-cooled 911s, but there are some air-cooled cars here and some earlier 356s, but not very many, but we'll get into that in a moment.
Be sure to log into your YouTube account, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video. Best of all, it's free to do so.
The two cars that we're starting to look at right now are two icons of the modern 911. This 2019 GT3 RS and one of my favorite modern 911s, the 2016 911R. They represent two very different approaches to performance and to modern Porsche enthusiasm. The GT3 RS is a track day car. It can be driven on the street, but it's really meant to turn the hottest laps you can in a supervised and safe environment. While the 911R harkens back to an earlier day, to the homologation special that was built back in 1968 with the original 911R, and what it represents in terms of a return to basics, something that a lot of Porsche enthusiasts really related to, and is something that we can really relate to here at the Audrain collection. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let's take a look at just a few of the other cars. The next two cars are really interesting. This 2018 GT2 RS and this 1972 Carrera RSR. Now, the GT2 RS, as we discussed before with the other two cars, is very much a track day car that you can take to the street. This 1972 Carrera RSR is a track car designed to be driven on the street, a homologation special. Now, this particular car was not born an RSR. However, it was built into an RSR by one of the Porsche legends, Kevin Jeanette. And this car uses all of the original RSR wheels, steel fenders, the lightened hood, and the interior components, and the engine built to exact RSR specifications from a 1972 S. So it's as close as you can get to a genuine Carrera RSR without actually having one. These cars are incredibly rare, of course, but having this car built to this condition makes a really fascinating driver on the street, and something which gives a real insight into the kind of high-performance Porsche of the early 1970s. Another company that likes to take a look at early Porsche performance is Singer. And this is a 911 reimagined by Singer. This 1991 964 has been refashioned to the style of an earlier 911 with the experts at Singer. One of the things that's really great about these early Singer builds is the fact that they're really manageable. They're very well balanced. It's not all about horsepower. It's about the driving experience, the horsepower, and the incredible details that Singer puts into their builds. And these cars are incredible fun and give you a real feeling of the original 911. It's something which is a very difficult thing to do because in modifying a car for performance, especially a 911, you have the tendency many times to get away from the essence of what Porsche engineers designed originally. The 911 is reimagined by Singer, especially in this era, is really something that feels very much like a 911 taken to the next level. Now, another bit of reimagining, of course, is done by the great Rod Emery. And Emery and his Outlaws are justly famed. And this car is a great example of a reinvention. this car looks like a 356. It sort of sounds like a 356 sometimes, but it drives like a completely different car. What Rod Emery has done is to take what the Porsche engineers designed originally and make it what they might have developed if the 356 had been developed for another 5, 6, 7, or 8 years, much like the 911 was since its introduction in 1964 through the end of the air-cooled era. Emery looks to detail as well, and you get the real feeling of a period car, but with every modern driving convenience. This is a car, again, given our ethos of drivability, this is a car that you just want to get in and drive as hard as you can, and it does it in a very safe manner, in a way that would be hard to imagine in a lot of 356s. Now to something slightly different. Of course, the history of Porsche is so linked with the 911. But this is a really interesting car, and it means a lot to what we do here in the collection. This is a 1980 911 SC. Now, of course, all of you dyed-in-the-wool Porsche files who are watching this know that the 911 SC in 1980 was designed to be the last 911, because, of course, the car was going to be replaced by the 928. But obviously that didn't happen. But this is a car which is a really interesting thing, because this is a car that really serves as a bridge between the everyday driver 911 and the collectible 911. And this is a car as well that exemplifies what it is that we try to do here at the Audrain collection, which is to sensitively update cars that are in the collection that still represent what the makers intended. So this car has been rebuilt by the experts at Road Scholars, and the engine has been gently massaged to produce just over 200 horsepower, but still maintain the character of the original car. And in fact, it's what the Porsche engineers would have delivered to the US had emission standards not gotten in the way. It delivers its driving experience in a way that is very familiar to anybody that's driven an early 911, but with that little bit of added security that was coming into Porsche at this time. And of course, the landmark status of the 911 SC as the most usable, perhaps, collector car there is really cemented by the experience of driving this car. Now, we'll see something in a slightly more modern Porsche, which also indicates how the 911 really transitioned in its role from a fairly narrow, nimble sports car to a somewhat more developed GT car. Our next car, this 911 Turbo S Exclusive, is a really interesting car because for me it represents a sort of departure for Porsche. This is one of the first, as I can imagine, a luxury GT performance Porsche. Now, all those words seem not to really go together, but Porsche makes it work in the Exclusive. And this is a car that delivers a driving experience very, very, very different than that of the 1980 911 SC, and certainly that of a 356. But it still has an essential Porsche character, which I think is key to the Porsche identity, and one of the reasons why we have it here in the Audrain collection, because it represents that balance of GT touring and performance. Now, speaking of performance, we're going to look at one of the performance icons of the Porsche line. Of course, the 356C is the ultimate derivation of the original Porsche model, the 356. However, the ultimate 356C is this, a Carrera 2, the four-cam legend that went from the racetracks to the street. And this, as the ultimate variant of the 356, is a natural here in the Audrain collections, because we like to feature the cutting edge, what the most advanced thinking of the Porsche engineers in the Porsche factory were for a particular model. Hence the collection of the GT3s, GT2 RSs, etc. And this is a car that also expresses in a very interesting way some of that same ethos that we see later, much later, in the 911 Turbo S Exclusive. There's something that is really amazing about the combination of performance and comfort that's seen in 356C. Of course, that very high performance engine mixed with this beautiful wood-rimmed wheel, the comfortable seats, headrests, and in this model, the rare sunroof. This car shows why so many Porsche enthusiasts were frankly slightly disappointed when the 911 was introduced in 1964. They wanted more of the 356. And it's interesting to think of what might have happened had Porsche continued to develop the 356, much as they would later do the 911. But stepping from the ultimate in performance in a 356 to the ultimate in performance in Porsches, let's look at this next pair of cars. Speaking of performance, the ultimate in analog performance for Porsche is the Carrera GT. This 10-cylinder beast, a car for the street, but really created as a super high-performance track car, is probably the ultimate expression of old-school engineering. And this car has become an absolute legend in the world, not just in the Porsche world, but in the world in general, as the representation of the highest form of this tech category of car. And here in the Audrain collection, of course, we had to have one of these cars. And if you noticed, a lot of the cars in the collection in these Porsches are yellow. And yellow is a fairly rare color for the Carrera GT. And I think it really expresses the shape of this car very well. I remember when the Carrera GT concept was first introduced, and I thought, wow, this is absolutely amazing, but surely they'll never build it. But the fact that it came to production so close to that concept car and actually is usable in a very intense way as a street car is a great tribute to the Porsche engineers and the Porsche factory. And it also brings us back to an era of performance that we all thought as enthusiasts was going to be the ultimate performance. But we were soon proved wrong because engineers, especially those at Porsche, never stop working. And the next car is a great example of the way forward. This is one of my favorite Porsches of all time, the 918. And the 918 is a really important car that will remain an important car, an icon in collecting because of what it represents. The first time that Porsche embraced and expressed their brand personality in the hybrid era. The 918 is also a beautiful car, and it expresses the Porsche design philosophy in a totally new way. It doesn't look like the Porsches that came before, and yet you know immediately that it is a Porsche. It's a car that also, in my opinion and for my personal tastes, really expresses performance well. It's a car you can drive around town as slowly as you like, and of course it's whisper quiet when it's in the electric mode, but you put your foot down and all of a sudden all the power and responsiveness that you expect in a Porsche is there and more. This is a car that I don't think that it's possible to find a fault with this car in the design, in the execution, in the performance. And it's no wonder that the people that own these cars, the lucky few, want to actually get out and drive them. Porsche had events for a 918 Spyder Circle in which they took these cars to interesting places, drove them on the track, drove them on great roads, and I think that's really what this car represents. It really is at the heart of what Porsche represents, and the reason why, of course, the Audrain collection had to have a 918. The last car we're going to look at today is an absolute legend in Porsche and one of the most important Porsches on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. Here at the Audrain Collections, in expressing our mission of preserving, celebrating, and sharing automotive history, originality is a really important thing for us. And the two cars we're going to look at now are two of the most original Porsches extant. They came to us through the acquisition of the Nick Begovich collection from Fullerton, California. And Nick Begovich was a brilliant automotive engineer who really prized performance and specification and fine engineering. He loved engineering solutions that were clever. He was a great admirer of Hans Ledwinka, the great pre-war designer of the Tatras, and so rear and mid-engine cars really fascinated Nick Begovich. And in his collection of cars were these two Porsches. This is the 1956 Porsche 356 Speedster he bought new in Los Angeles, and which to this day has only covered 10,000 miles. He used these cars more than many of the cars he owned for a very regular time in the 1950s into the early 1960s. This car displays original finishes throughout, with the exception of the passenger door that was repainted at some point in the 1970s and a few areas of touch-up. It's an amazing testament to the way these cars were built, and driving this Speedster, which I've had the great opportunity to do, is astonishing. It is literally like taking a step back into time. as if it's 1962 or 1963. You're driving a gently used, well-maintained Porsche. The last car we're going to look at today is truly a star. This is inarguably the most original 904 on the planet. Nick Begovic bought this car new from the Porsche factory in 1964, drove it a bit around Germany, took a lap of the Nürburgring, and then shipped it home to California, where it was driven very sparingly, but maintained constantly, and today shows less than 3,000 kilometers from new. To look at this car, to drive this car, as I'm sure many of you have seen in the PCA video that I did with this car last year, is an amazing experience. It literally is like driving a brand new 904. You also can see the settling that naturally happens with fiberglass, especially fiberglass built in the manner in which Porsche built this car. Every part of it, except for the tires, is as it left the Porsche factory. It's an amazing testament to not only the 904, but again, to the Porsche engineers and what they created in this time. This is also one of my favorite periods in automotive history, when sports racing cars were street cars as well. You would drive to the track, race, and drive home. And especially in a car like this, the 904, built for powerful and challenging hill climbs and the great distance races, Sebring, Daytona, Le Mans, Spa, Monza. This is a car designed to go the distance, and the fact that it's here as a representation, a testament to all of what Porsche stands for is an amazing thing and something that the Audrain collection is extremely proud of. So that's just a look at the tip of the iceberg of the Porsches in the Audrain collections and the mix of the air-cooled, water-cooled, naturally aspirated, and turbocharged cars, all of which express the essential Porsche theme of balance and performance. It's what counts here at the Audrain collection. It's why we have these Porsches.